We've been talking a lot lately about how horror's shifted into a more trauma and drama based type of storytelling, and how most modern horror movies don't really scare us anymore. Strange
Right.
Harvest, a little different. Now, I'm not talking about like jump scares and like gore and terrifier, gratuitous, just slow, uneasy feeling that kind of sticks with you afterwards. And I actually haven't felt that in a really, really long time, which I've vocalized. And this movie reignited that in me, and I'm excited to talk about it. So this was made by, as you said, Stuart Ortiz. Apparently he's been in the found footage horror movie game for a little bit now.
Decade now plus. Yeah.
It takes found footage and kind of flips it on its head. I've never seen anything done like this before personally. I thought when I watched the trailer it was just a regular found footage movie. Turns out this is a mockumentary, and it's shot like a true crime doc that you would find on Netflix or HBO or whatever. It's a very, very common format that is so popular these days, especially with white people.
Love it.
Yeah, white chicks especially. They love true crime.
I had to re-look up the name. Like, am I watching the right thing? Similar to Ugly Stepsister with the subtitle or with the language thing. I was like, am I watching the right thing?
That's funny.
Turns out I was. Yeah.
This is set in Southern California's Inland Empire region. Like I said, it uses that true crime documentary style. It's to a T. You got interviews, you get crime scene photos, news footage, all to tell the fictional story of an investigation of a serial killer dubbed Mr. Shiny. Honestly, this movie did what most modern horror movies have not done to me in years, and that is gotten under my skin. It felt believable. It was disturbing, and I thought it was super effective without ever really needing to jump scare or use cheap tricks or anything like that. Out of the gate, I'm just going to tell you, I loved this movie.
There's some aspects about this movie that I absolutely loved. Shout out to the special effects crew. They did an amazing job. The problem that I had with this film was the cops, and they took me out of it every time they opened their mouth. And I don't know if it was a mixture of writing and acting. But I loved everything else about this movie. But those two cops that were like the central point of like telling the story.
Yeah.
Was just a little too many cliche statements. I'm not a person who really likes these. Like, shout out to Sean, my old roommate. He loves true crime docs, watched them all the time. I never really watched them with him. Christina loves true crime docs. She watches them all the time. I don't really watch them with her. So when I first started watching the movies, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to hate this movie. But I actually liked like the story about the killer. Like, this is what true crimes want to be. They want this video evidence, this story that they can tell. This is it's pretty clever, but again, the cops, they took me out of it a lot when they said it. Like some of the things they said or how they said it, I was just like, okay, now I know I'm watching a movie and not a documentary about a real crime.
Dude, it's so funny.
That's my biggest complaint.
I'm almost like the exact same as Dusty with the cops. Like every time the lady would speak and say something, I was expecting it to do like The Office, like zoom in on her face and she's like looks into the camera and smile. It was so bad at some points. I also don't really like true crime stuff. So I was like, oh God, this is going to be one of those. But they did it really well. I think they get an A for effort. The storytelling was good. They had the same exact format where they're like interviewing the people and like getting all the backstory and key witnesses and people related to them. And like, it was all done really well. I'm just not a fan of true crime stuff. So that's probably where it is not the best watch for me.
I don't disagree with you guys. I think it's more of a writing thing than an acting thing. However, I did feel those interviews felt like pretty real to me. I don't know. They feel like weird and uncomfortable, and like there's awkward pauses, and like it is amateurly framed. They have like this restrained emotion when they're talking. It looks like they're acting for sure. It looks like bad acting, but every time that happened or it popped into my head, I was like, well, because I do watch a lot of true crime docs. I love true crime docs. I watch them all. I watch all the HBO ones. I watch the Netflix ones. I watch the Unsolved Mysteries revival. Like this is the you get, because they take these cops and they put them on screen. They're not actors or anything. They're not like, and And they
But these felt like actors
They
instead
felt
of
like they were trying.
detectives
they were
talking on camera. Yeah.
a little bit. It
you
did
can
at
tell when a
times.
cop's talking versus somebody's trying to act like it wasn't even just the main two. It was all the cop. The other guy that was in the wheelchair. Like at one point he was like, "Man, I knew I should have stayed at the car."
Yeah.
And then he was like, "Man, it should have been me." It's like, which one is it? Should you have been the hero that died, or should you stayed at the car? I don't know what I'm talking about.
There was a little bit of that. I do agree with you, but most of the time when it happened,
But that was the writing, I guess. But some of it was the overacting of the cop. Like,
when it did occur, I was mostly like, whatever. I dismissed it as like, because it's just regular. They're supposed to be regular people that have a camera in their face, right? I'm not disagreeing with you guys. There was a lot of awkward stuff and like maybe a little bit not overacting, but like
cheesy,
forceful acting. But it wasn't enough to like take me out of it because the overall experience for me, I was like, I don't know about you guys. I was like gripped by this movie. I thought they did like such a really good job telling this story in a compelling way. This could have been a regular standard movie like Seven, like the first season of True Detective, which he was inspired by. This could have been like
any serial killer chasing movie.
Zodiac.
Standard. Zodiac, yeah.
But the fact that it was framed as a true crime doc,
that's where they get the points for me.
Like
that's where
it made it so
knocked it out of the park.
Compelling. And I was like literally like, oh, I was like locked in. Like, what's going to happen next?
I saw that it was fictional, but I was like, okay, did they get inspiration? I looked it up like, is Mr. Shiny real? I was like, is he real? I was like, no, he's not even real. I was like, damn, they killed this. I thought it was at least based on a true
first thing I did
story or something.
Yeah, first thing I did was looked up if this was based on a true story. So like, you don't get more effective than that. Dusty, you mentioned the visuals, the crime scene photos of the multiple corpses, stuff like that was...
Yeah, the dude hanging in the park on the swing.
A lot of that stuff was a little bit more
crazy.
Movie-ish because...
That was definitely movie-ish.
They wouldn't show that type of stuff on a true crime doc. It's too brutal and stuff.
Yeah, even with all the videos and stuff, they wouldn't show that stuff.
Yeah,
but that was for the
stabbing
movie.
the dude.
But what it reminded, they wouldn't show none of that. But what it reminded me of was remember I talked about the incredible marketing for Longlegs, where they released
with that type
like
of,
the fake journalism and stuff that was investigating the murders over the years. Yeah, it reminded me a lot of that, and it was really cool.
Yeah,
and it made me feel like this was real. It just all felt very real to me. I don't know.
They pulled from a lot of good bags, like with the webcam stuff, like you said, the found footage, the photos.
And the fact that it spanned decades, like the killing started in the 90s, like it had this extra air of like creepiness to it. That
because he's just chilling out there and then he comes back. Yeah.
Right. The early mystery was especially creepy because the killer's identity is unknown. And that builds a lot of unease, the unknown factor, right? And it reminds you of things like, the Zodiac killer and these people in real life. I was wondering if they were going to reveal his identity like a true crime doc would. Most true crime docs happen after the fact when it's solved and like whatever. And I thought that when they did reveal who the killer was, like his actual identity, I thought it was going to like lessen the mystique. But instead, the movie introduces a whole new concept to it that they hadn't really built towards yet. They did a little bit with the symbolism and occult stuff, but then it takes a whole new turn. At first, I was like, you lost me. Like, you lost me a little bit. But surprisingly, it didn't. It actually helped to sustain the creep factor, at least for me.
I thought it was a great addition. It wasn't like introduced too early. So like you said, it kept it going. Mm-hmm. Like you knew he was into some weird, but it wasn't ever confirmed if anything was happening yet until like the very end. So I thought it was good.
Obviously, when you hear them talk about what he's doing, he has a mission. Now you don't usually just chalk that up to crazy psychopath who believes in some weird shit that's not true.
Right.
But he still has like these rules and this mission that he's on, that he's following. That's another, the cop, the lady cop who was like, oh, he's even taking care of this baby, like out of all this stuff. Like
the paternal. Yeah.
Well, he's got a mission. Obviously, you've been tracking this guy for how long? You know, he's not just He's not a random like sidewalk killer. He's trying to do some shit.
It wasn't forced. Like it wasn't even the main like fear.
No, not at all. Even
the guy
once,
himself was way more scary than
even once they revealed it.
Even once he revealed it,
Yeah. I think the brilliance of this movie is how it weaponizes things that are familiar, right? Like the true crime language, the procedural editing, the journalistic tone.
Right.
And it turns us, the audience, into investigators. Like every time they put one of his letters on screen, I paused it to read the whole thing. I was looking for fucking clues. Like I like that's what you do when you watch true crime. And like it really just like locked me in.
It kind of makes it easier too for the director because it's already a well-known format that these shows are in. So it's like he doesn't have to do much for that part of it. Like there's still obviously direction that goes into it, but you already have the format there. You just kind of follow it.
It made me get involved and like I wasn't just watching it anymore. Like I was trying to like figure it out, even though it wasn't really happening. It's just, I don't know, little small verifiable details like that just helped so much. It was really, really cool. So yeah, I don't know. This might be one of the most convincing found footage horror movies in years, maybe since Blair Witch Project.
It's so unique in that found footage space that this is like an immediate standout for me.
This movie actually like scared me. I'm not saying that like I'm going to lose sleep over this movie. I wasn't like cowering in fear when I watched it, but I will tell you what, I took my dog out at like 3:30 in the morning after watching this movie and I was creeped the fuck out in my backyard. It was dark. It was quiet out. And that means that this movie was effective. And I haven't felt that in a very long time. In fact, the last time I did feel that was when I first watched Zodiac for the very first time. Now that movie is based on a real killer who was never caught. And I remember I went outside, I smoked a cigarette and I was sitting outside and I was like, it was not late and it was quiet. And I was like, this motherfucker is still out there somewhere. He could be next door right now. That is so viscerally creepy. And that's why, as I've said many, many times, I don't shut up about it. That's why Halloween is my favorite horror movie. That's why Black Christmas is one of my favorite horror movies. That's why Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of my favorite horror movies. That's why those movies are so effective and everlasting, because they weaponize reality, right?
Yeah.
Anybody could put on a mask and start stalking you and kill your friends on Halloween night.
The motive is irrelevant. The violence is real.
Exactly. And the horror is real because there, you know, evil is real in the sense that there are people that do bad things.
Oh yeah.
That normal people can't fully understand. That is true horror, not like Satan and all this fake bullshit that we tell ourselves. So yeah, I overall, I thought this movie was fantastic. If that wasn't clear, I loved it. I thought everything about it was great.
I think, like I said, I think they did everything right. I'm not a fan of true crime stuff, so
that's fair.
It takes a little hit just personally there for me, but execution wise and plot wise, acting besides those two cops was pretty good.
Besides those two cops,
yeah, it was a good film. I would recommend it to people, especially people who like true crime stuff. I would definitely recommend it. But there were some things that took me out of it. Like I said, it was partially the dialogue, but partially the way the dialogue was executed. So
yeah, I was really surprised by it. Highly recommend. It's got some pretty good ratings on Rotten Tomatoes and on IMDb. It's sitting at a 6.4. I would bump this up. Honestly, I don't think there's really that much wrong with it. I would give this an 8.
I actually would give this an 8 too. Wow. If I was into this genre though, I would give it higher. If I was into true crime stuff, I would give it higher.
I can't give it a bump. I mean, I guess I do have to give it a bump. I'd have to give it a 6.5 from 6.4, but
so you're in the same area.
I can't give it a 7.
That was another thing, too. We didn't even mention that real quick. The deaths were very creative and cool. For what is essentially a slasher film, right? You want cool deaths, and this had that. This had creative deaths. They did a lot of effective stuff, so definitely go watch it if you haven't done so already. If you have watched it, leave a comment down below. Let us know what you thought about it. I was very pleasantly surprised by it.